would not mind, you can put on your camera, it's fine. I wouldn't want to take much of our time because I am also eager to learn. I want to understand how these things work. So first, biomimicry is gaining global attention as an innovative approach to sustainability. For listeners who may be hearing the term for the first time, what is biomimicry and why is it increasingly relevant in addressing today's climate and environmental challenges?
Thank you, Suzanne. Like I said, it's such a great pleasure to be doing this. Biomimicry is something I'm very passionate about. It's, as the name implies, it's a combination of two words, bio, which means life, and mimesis, which means copying, which means learning from. So biomimicry actually means copying. It's a practice. It means learning from nature and utilizing the processes, procedures that nature uses to do things, to do our own things. You will notice that nature does not kill things. But we, in the process, just like you introduced, when we want to build houses, we damage so much vegetation and we go ahead and destroy a lot of things. And then we build our nice, good looking houses and we live in them, having jeopardized biodiversity, having damaged so many things. We build those houses, we live in them, we put on generators, we emit into the atmosphere, we cook our food through emitting heat and all into the atmosphere. We bring out a lot of waste, we wear clothes once or twice, we dispose of them, we discard plastic, all of these things, we throw them into the soil. For each of them that goes and covers an area in the soil, prevents microorganisms which have their own purpose in the initial intent from growing. And as that happens, it limits the growth of the ecosystem. So biomimicry is here to the rescue and is much needed now that we have gone into, the world has moved into such a consumption culture that takes a lot off the cosmos. We want to use phones only once in a year and replace it with the latest phone that comes. We want to wear the latest baggy trouser. These cultures, as they come, and as a lot of our young people and Gen Zs sign on to these cultures, they are increasingly damaging the cosmos. And so that is why, as a person, I have picked interest in biomimicry to not just conserve the environment, but to also prevent accidents at work. I've even written a book on this, which I'll talk about later on. So this is an area of concern now because our world is building cultures that, in my opinion, are very destructive. There's a need, therefore, for us to go back to nature and learn from the core principles that founded the world in the first place, principles that for over 3.8 billion years have survived existence, which we are now about to exterminate by the oncoming practices. So yes, this is why this is very important at this time. So biomimicry is that practice of learning from nature, studying nature, learning its processes, procedures, and utilizing them to make life better and make the atmosphere, the ecosystem more habitable. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. The fact that we have to learn about nature and use it to conserve our environment, that is amazing. And that will take me quickly to the next question, which is nature has spent billions of years perfecting solutions to complex problems. We can't take that away. Can you share some practical examples of how industries and communities are applying nature inspired solutions to reduce environmental impact and promote sustainable development?
Thank you once again, Vivian and Susan. So again, you will see that nature has been fantastic to us in the sense that, we were thrown into a very fantastic world where every organism had an interaction. There was nothing that was put here that was a waste. Where you have a lot of rats, when snakes come into that place, they feed on those rats and reduce the rat population in that place. The rats there will in turn feed on other things. You have mosquitoes. There's a food chain that is established, which by the time everybody is settled, there's a balance in the ecosystem. But we've done our own bit, we've destroyed for 3.8 billion years from our scientific findings. Nature has been evolving, kind of taking care of growth and getting resilience. So what are those things that across the world, from Japan to Germany to the US, scientists have gone back to nature and have learned a lot from our immune system, the way our immune system is balanced. You will see that immediately you have a small cut in your hand, your immune system replies to that automatically. That cut looks white. That whitish thing you are seeing there is white blood cells that your immune system has deployed to immediately handle that, so that the wound doesn't get infected. That is nature having an automated process better than the internet, to be able to quickly. So this is lessons from nature that we should, whenever things go wrong, there should already be a plan in place to address things that might go wrong. Not waiting when an emergency happens, the time to prepare has passed. Nature is always prepared to ensure that the response is timely. That's one. Secondly, Japan, scientists in Japan started building a train. That was called the bullet train in a place called Shinkansen in Japan. That train was always going through a tunnel. Each time it passed through that tunnel, there will be a boom sound, which will cause a lot of noise so that the inhabitants couldn't even stay, and a lot of energy is lost to that drag. But these scientists have tried, they have done all the calculations, they couldn't solve that problem. They sat down and decided to study the kingfisher bird. They noticed that the kingfisher bird does not eat anything except fish, and fish is in the water. Now, that bird has to always fly into the river. But each time it goes into the river, the fish doesn't even know that the bird is coming. So they found out, they studied the bird. They say, look, the way the beak, the skull of the bird was constructed was such that there's nothing like drag. As it changed from air to water, there's no disruption in the ecosystem. So they studied it, they drew the angles and found out what did nature do here that prevented that sound from happening. They saw the gradation, that gradation on the skull from the beak to the skull. They saw that this was how the problem was solved. They drew the diagrams, they used it to change the face of that train. And that took away the noise and the boom and increased the speed level of the train and made the train more effective. That's just one of the many ways that man is learning from nature. Then there are a lot of other ways. If you look at it, the shark has a lot of antimicrobial properties, and man has copied from the skin of shark to make so many things that are now helping, in hospitals and in many other places. If you look at your aircraft, the aircraft directly copies the bird. And then you see that in those aircraft, every aircraft has two engines. That copies nature, because nature made us with two kidneys, two nostrils, two eyes, two ears. So that whenever one fails, it not doesn't mean that you're now totally incapable of surviving. So as this aircraft fly in mid-air, they have copied from nature to have two engines so that they are balanced whenever they are moving. At the end of the day, there's nothing like, oh, because one engine has failed, the aircraft has collapsed. So the pilots will not tell you, but many times they'll be on the flight, one engine will fail, they'll transfer to the other engine. Just the way you will not know that as you are walking now, sometimes your one kidney can fail, the other one will switch in. Sometimes you have a problem with one eye, the other eye is looking. Sometimes one nostril is blocked, the other nostril is functioning. Sometimes one ear is faulty, the other one is working. These are redundancies that nature has built. And we need to learn from nature to be able to use these redundancies to improve the ecosystem and talking non-stop to give you different ways in which man has begun to gradually copy nature. And my book is nearly 1,000 pages. In that book, these are all the things I've talked about, talking about how man is copying from nature, how man must continue to copy from nature to prevent industrial accidents, because 2.7 million accidents, 2.7 million people die every year from poorly managed occupational health and safety at work across the world. This is ILO statistics. And we can, if we copy from nature, we can reduce the statistics, reduce the number of people that have died, improve the gross domestic product of countries, because about $3 trillion of the world finances are lost every year to these accidents. So we need to learn from nature to be able to reduce these impacts. And this is very crucial at the moment. Thank you very much.
Wow, wow, that is so much information. As a science student, I was listening attentively, when you were talking of two ears, kidneys, two nose, and it could resonate. I'm sure our
Yeah.
listeners are also learning so much from this. And if you are just joining in, this is Women Radio WFM 91.7. Nigeria's women radio for women and their families. And time check, it is 16 minutes before 12 noon. And we are on the show Climate Care, where I have Dr. Julius Akon, a safety culture architect and industrial risk leadership professional. To be a part of the program, please do well to call our phone lines 0700 0917. You can also call our toll free line 0800 Send us a WhatsApp message on 070 And hey, you can watch us live on YouTube at WFM 917 or on our social media handles at WFM 91.917. I beg your pardon. And yeah, we've been on with Dr. Um, Julius. And so I have learned a whole lot. It will take me a lot to also digest this. But now you've made mention of different countries, but let's bring it down to Nigeria now. Considering Nigeria's environmental realities, from flooding and waste management to deforestation and rapid urbanization as we have it, where do you see the greatest
Sorry, I lost you there briefly. Hello, Suzanne. Suzanne, I think you're having a network problem. Oops. Hello, Suzanne.
opportunities for applied doctor? We've been speaking with Dr. Julius Akon, who is okay. I think he's back. Okay. I don't know if you got the questions,
Yeah,
doctor. Sorry for that
I lost
network
you briefly,
glitch.
but I picked some things that you were saying. You were asking that we bring the applicability from global perspectives to Nigerian perspective. And
Especially for
I
governments and businesses, yes,
beautiful.
pursuing climate
Now,
adaptation.
thank you very much. There are two basic things that, as far as the climate is concerned, that we need to look at: adaptation and mitigation. Now, you see, so much talk has been on for about these things in Nigeria, and I always do not like to say, well, we now must move to noise, that as I always like to call it, to action on the ground. One of the most fundamental things about our environments in Nigeria and across Africa. I mean, I've traveled quite a lot around Africa, and I can say that the biggest issues we have are the fact that we seem to live with too much waste. We generate a lot of waste, and we don't seem to have a lot of problem with our waste. So the waste management culture must become intrinsic, must be something we train our children about. Because if you look into the natural world, nature does not waste. In fact, 2 years ago, I visited a national park in Livingstone, Zambia. And as I was coming out of the park, something was written there that nature does not do waste. The only waste you find in this park are done by human beings. And that really crossed me because Nature makes animals, nature makes plants. When these animals eat, they eat what is in nature, they eat the plants. Animals were not made to eat biscuits or all these things we create, or pizza, or these things. Animals eat what nature made for them, the plants. And at the end of the day, or other animals as necessary. At the end of the day, when they pass out the feces, or even when some of them die, they return to the soil, and their bodies, the carcass has advantage to the soil. It adds up as manure to the soil. So when you follow that cycle, nature does not waste. Now, but when we came with our engineering, we were supposed to engineer, and if we were wise from the very beginning, our engineering was supposed to ensure that we have recreated that same process. But unfortunately, the ingenuity, the destructive ingenuity of man led us away from there into creating things that now have a damaging effect on the environment. So it is now time for us to take a U-turn. So in Nigeria and Africa, what we must look at, all these blocked drainages that we are keeping because of our waste and poor waste management culture. We must now go back to the forest, look at how the wetlands and mangrove forests are managing themselves. You see that beyond even just waste management, if you go to the forest, what people don't see in the forest is that the bigger trees, they use their roots to support the roots of the smaller trees. That's why when wind comes, the smaller trees are protected by the big and overriding roots of the bigger trees, and they shed the air resistance that they provide. So sustainable living means that those who are doing better than others are shielding the lower ones. But if you look back into Nigeria and Africa, you will be better left in the cold so that you can realize how rich and how bigger than you the rich man is. This kind of culture is a lack of learning from nature. What nature does, how you can show that you're bigger than the next plant, the next animal in nature, is not in your destructive overtake of the weaker vessel or the weaker level. It's in your overriding supremacy that protects. Supremacy is measured by protection, not by defeat. And I'm not talking about somebody who's quickly go into how the lion eats other animals, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you get into the wetlands, the mangrove forest, if you go into the deltas, you come into the Lagos coastline, if you look at all those our Atlantic Ocean interfaces where we exist, you look at how nature is being mimicked. If we mimic how the forest is managing itself, the forest is a kingdom on its own. And that's why, and I'm happy to be on Women's Radio, because they say that the forest is the lungs of the earth. And you know, the women are the mainstay of the earth. So we should manage the lung of the earth. The mothers of the earth should manage the lungs of the earth. So it's very right that the women are fronting this program to discuss these ways in which we can go back to nature and equip the lungs of the earth to allow the ecosystem breathe. If the ecosystem does not breathe, we draw closer to not having anything to bequeath to generations coming after us. That makes us an irresponsible generation, a generation that is not able to leave a healthy environment to the oncoming ones. So if we were going to innovate in engineering, our best masterpiece was supposed to be nature itself, which engineers an end-to-end solution such that there's nothing like cradle to grave. There's only cradle to cradle, where you take something and eat, you throw that thing back into where it will regenerate and give you a cycle that will create another of that thing. Anything now that we have that is not able to get back in the process and bring back itself does not follow the course of nature. And that goes for the metals we build, that goes for the shirts we wear, that goes for the plastics we drink out of, that goes for glasses, that goes for everything else. So in Nigeria, we must now learn, we must now learn from.
Unfortunately, I would have to interject a bit
Okay.
because time is never enough on this show.
Yeah.
But in your final words, if there is one lesson, just one lesson, humanity must learn from nature to secure a more sustainable future, what would that be for you, Doctor?
Thank you very much. For me, for us to go back to nature, number one lesson humanity must learn is that nature builds and recreates and regenerates itself. Any thinking that we do that brings an external, a foreign material that damages part of nature is not sustainable. So for us to build sustainable systems, we must learn from nature. Anything you make, if you make a laptop, ensure that when that laptop gets old, we can put it back into the factory to create another laptop, not to throw it into the environment. Whatever you create, we must be able to put it back into the process that regenerates. If you make a biro, ensure that we can make that biro, put that biro into the factory and bring another biro from inside that biro. Otherwise, we are just a waste of space. So this is what, for me, we should learn from nature. We have not done well if we have not recreated this process. For me, it is crucially important that all of us are able to build systems that are regenerative and can recreate themselves. This is the sure way by which even the economies of the world, the politics of the world, everything else we are doing in the world, this is the only way they can become robust enough to support the next generation. Without this, we are just doing trial and error methods. And trial and error methods never actually take anybody anywhere. So this is my message, that we should, all the environmental agencies, policy making bodies, I mean, across the board, we must all learn to make our policies that regenerate themselves. And in that light, give back to the environment. If we continue to go the way we are going, in a very short while, even we ourselves would not be assured of the right kind of air we breathe. Because you see, right now, what is happening is we breathe out carbon dioxide, the plants take it, they make their own food, they give us fresh oxygen, which we breathe back into our systems. And for as long as we truncate this process, we will not have a smooth ride. So I will be launching my book on September 5th, and that book has all of this information and more in it to help us,
Okay.
before. Yeah.
Wow, it's been an amazing show this morning. And Doctor, I hope you would be open to coming in. You know what we
Yeah.
do on Women Radio, most of the things we do, are
Yeah.
on charity basis and all of that,
Sure.
to ensure that we also promote this culture, especially for women and other vulnerable groups. A big thank
Yeah.
you to Dr. Julian Sapong, a safety
Pleasure.
culture architect and industrial risk leadership professional, for joining us today and sharing your insights. For me, ultimately, biomimicry is more than an engineering tool.
Sure.
It is a
Yeah.
philosophy of survival. Nature has
Thank
already
you.
solved
It is.
the exact environmental challenges we face today, operating entirely on renewable energy, recycling all waste, and
Yeah.
resiliently, adapting to change. If we want to secure a sustainable future, we must stop forcing nature to adapt to us. Instead, we must learn to adapt to nature, reshaping our industries and minds to become a welcome, functioning part of the living earth. Thank you for listening to Climate Care on Women Radio WFM 91.7. Special
Thank
thanks to
you.
my producer Aisha Sani and my executive producer Ton Okewale Shonaya. Thank you to my amazing guest, Dr. Julius Akon. My name is
Yeah.
Susan Iwoma. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and remain climate conscious and have a fantastic weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.